Hello and welcome to From the BLM, the Burnley podcast. No Newsnight style intro this week, which means that there's no Simon Evans. Earlier this week, he was commenting about how we should hear from Chairman Alan Pace. Well, we're not going to hear from our chairman, Mr. Simon Evans, this week, but I am very pleased to say we have got a very special guest joining us, friend of the podcast, and the Athletics Burnley correspondent, Andy Jones, is joining us. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Alongside the usual pod squad, Justin Connolly, Paul Woodhouse, and Chris Borden. The Clarets don't play until Sunday, so we've not got a Vincent press conference to take the mickey out of and dissect word by word this week. But because we've got Andy here, we thought we'd kind of ask him about how he feels Vincent has changed, perhaps his demeanour in those press conferences, and a few other bits as well. And look ahead to, of course, Sunday's game against Bournemouth, which somebody rather, I think more out of hope or desperation, text me today saying the Phoenix will rise. I'm not quite sure. We keep talking about false dawns and things, but it is a good opportunity, isn't it, Justin, to kind of restore some pride, if nothing else, against a team that's woefully out of form.
Oh, yes, it is. But how many times have we been here? How many times have we got one of these games where it's not one of these games that we're beaten already before we go out on the field? I just want to see a little bit of a reaction. I just want to see, the players show a little bit of pride in wearing the shirt and put the shift in, do the work, do the running. I can take it if we lose, if we do that, I'm not expecting much else from them, but that's the bare minimum that you've got to see, isn't it? And it's about time that these players who were paid an awful lot of money to wear a Burnley shirt put in the same amount of effort as the hundreds of Burnley fans who are going to make the trip to the turf on Sunday and back them to the hilt as they always do.
Yeah, and Woody, a lot of talk this week and a lot of talk on this podcast about feeling detached from this side. It does feel like we need a performance to try and, almost kind of, sink back up almost, doesn't it?
Almost. And I'll be rising like a slightly odd phoenix, and it's on at 8 o'clock in the morning over here. So I know it'll have all gone to shit by about 8:15. So, yeah, yes, we need something, and even a half decent performance, I don't know, will go too far along the way to repairing, I think, what's becoming an irreparable season. But it would be nice to see something to latch onto this week rather than the same old, same old.
Yeah, and before we bring Andy in, Chris, you had a kind of almost, you were resigned in terms of, look, I'm at this point, I'm not really kind of, bothered whether Vincent stays or whether he goes, and you were kind of a bit, I don't know, like a lot of us, a bit ambivalent towards the rest of the season, but a good performance with a run of games, and I know we keep saying this, we just need a run of games after Bournemouth, could just give us a bit of a timely boost, couldn't it, in terms of going into a run of fixtures where, even if it doesn't save us from relegation, at least makes it look respectable.
Well, this it's the old cliche, isn't it? About, like I say, I don't think there's a cat and owl's chance of them staying up, even if Forest are deducting points. But it's the cliche is, well, let's try and end the season well. And we don't know how many of these players will be here next season. We don't know if the manager will be here or how long he'll be here next season. But I look back to sort of Stan Turner's first season. It was, beset by from all sides by he sacked the players early doors, sacked 4 of the players, and they got walloped 5 and 6 in back-to-back home games by Gillingham and City, and then lost to North End. But they went on a run of like 11 games, and it sort of like set the tone for the season after. And I think you can do that to an extent. And but ultimately, Bournemouth have had a season better than most people expected. The new manager's had a great impact. Solanke's, whether he's fit or not, is fulfilling the potential a lot of people thought he had. But good grief, if Burnley in the current predicament can't beat Bournemouth at home, then there's no hope for them. There's a Championship side. They won at their place last year in the Cup. And Bournemouth were probably the better side down there, but Burnley should have been getting a result out there and might have done with a VAR call or two. But let's say whistle goes, and the backing, the support will be there again, and we just want to see wholehearted, committed display, and let's see where it takes us.
Definitely. We're going to bring Andy in now to cheer us up. He's going to tell us how chicker Vincent Kompany is in all his press conferences before the cameras roll. I know he looks kind of downbeat and slightly depressed in the actual press conferences, but have you noticed a shift in his kind of demeanour? I mean, last season, of course, he's a bit, laughy and jokey with Phil Bird when he was doing the questioning sometimes that, we saw. But this year, he looks like he's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and sinking further into his chair. Is that the kind of impression you get being at the press conferences down at the training ground?
I think it does feel a lot more business-like, and I think that's understandable because, quite frankly, there isn't anything to laugh and smile about at the minute, is there? Or there hasn't been for all season. And I think it's one of them with press conferences is that, he has been asked the same question a lot, it's fair to say, because that's the theme of the season and that's the way it's gone. And there's not been any point where Burnley have put a run together to sort of, especially in terms of results, that have been able to sort of lift the mood. There's been performances, but, you can only talk positively about performances for so long. And we've seen that because he's talked about the span of the sort of 12 to 16 games he's referred to before Arsenal, where largely, performances were okay. And, in games they were unlucky not to get points. But then as soon as that ends and you go back to the way they've gone in the last 2 games, then it becomes very difficult. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's a massive change, but his demeanour, he's still, in the way he answers his questions, he's still very thoughtful and very, he gets a little bit prickly with certain ones, but not often. He's usually quite measured. It's more after the game where I think you're beginning to see a little bit more of the frustrations, and I think the reality is, hitting home harder than it ever has about the predicament and probably the struggle of, because I think while it might not look as such because of results and performances, they have tried to tweak things and they have tried to change things to get results. And I know that the lineup has been the most recent, or one of the recent complaints about it not changing. But they sort of found a way by not changing around at December time when they finally got a team of about 8 or 9 together. But I think that's the problem. Is I think it feels to me like he's at a little bit of a point where I don't know what to do next. Now, he will, of course, I'm sure, will push back on that and say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and don't worry about it. And, we've got a plan. But it does feel like because when you go through it, what else can you try at this point? It's got to that point of the season now where you have tried your different, your different personnel, your different systems to an extent, different styles of trying to get into games and win games, and none of it's worked. So it's, what's your next plan? And the problem is that there's no time to test that plan. You've got to win the next game. So there's still every now and again a little smile and a little joke, but it does feel a lot more business-like. But I think it's a lot easier to have a bit of fun when you're winning. I think that ultimately is what it comes down to. And while there might not be necessarily the pressure in the sense of, is he going to have his job by next week or not, he will be feeling the pressure because he knows that he's got to somehow find positives to take into next season, regardless of what division they're in, and he's got to keep searching for that positivity. And that's why the answers, which may become annoying for fans, in the idea of the developments and all that type of stuff, well, he might he has to still believe in that, and I think he does believe in it. But I think you can see that the season's worn him out a little bit, and it's what you do next.
Yeah, and Justin, I mean, you famously said 99% misery. I mean, you had a glorious full head of hair at the start of the season, and you've got now. I think Andy's right, though, doesn't it? It does feel like the season has worn Vinny out. I mean, he's looking a bit older. He's looking like he's not sleeping as well. But I guess, Andy mentioned there, look, they have changed personnel. But if I was to say to you, pick 2 players that we haven't changed, which 2 players would you be picking out? Just at a guess.
Well, one of them is going to be the goalkeeper.
Correct.
The other one, who's the other one?
Amdouni.
Of course.
Do we think?
And Trafford.
And I'm going to ask Andy this, but I'm going to ask everyone. I've kind of, we keep talking about Amdouni, and he's kind of, I know I refer to Josh Brownell as the insert expletive ghost, but Amdouni's almost, he is literally a ghost, isn't he? I mean, Andy said last week at Crystal Palace before we came on air, they were trying to work out who'd been sacrificed for Josh Cullen, and had to go down the list, and it was only then that they realised Amdouni was even in the starting lineup. We talked about it before, but there are still things Vincent can do to try and get, if not the season back on track, try and end the season on a high, as Chris said, is important, aren't they?
Yeah, it's difficult to lay the blame for what's happened solely at the feet of 2 players, isn't it? And I do think that Trafford's had kind of a much better season than people give him credit for. I think he's definitely improved. He's still learning how to play the game at Premier League level, and that time and space that he's perhaps used to, given his previous experience, isn't there anymore. Amdouni, I think, has struggled this season, but I think also that is again partly down to the fact that the team struggled. None of the forward players have really thrived, have they? Because they've not seen that much of the ball in that area of the pitch. But a lot of people were saying, weren't they, earlier on in the season that you'll recall that season when Joe Hart was playing in goal and he didn't particularly do anything wrong, but the team wasn't performing as expected, and they switched him out for Tom Heaton, and it all came good again. Whether that would happen again, I don't know, but I suppose we've bust already this season, haven't we? So we might as well twist in both those areas of the pitch and just see what happens. If nothing else, it'll give us a bit of guidance towards what might happen next season. It might restore a bit of pride if it does have some sort of positive impacts on the rest of the team. Like we keep saying, how will we know if we don't try it?
Yeah, and would it? I mean, very diplomatic there from Justin. I'm sure we're going to get a far less diplomatic answer from you, as is the normal way. I'm preparing the "it's bullshit" button again, but Justin's right, isn't it? The season is bust. We might as well, if it's a case of stick or twist, for Trafford and Amdouni's own sanity, perhaps, kind of, giving him a rest. We've talked about Trafford, and we've gone in through the Trafford versus Muric debate until we're blue in the face. But Bournemouth at home kind of feels like the kind of game that a little bit of a tweak might bring about. You're not up against Arsenal or City or something like that, but it is almost one of them games you think, given what happened last week, where you perhaps think that it's a safe or a safer option to tweak 2 fairly key areas, don't you?
You would have thought in an earlier time, perhaps, but I don't think any amount of tinkering and twatting about is going to do much with this particular side. I mean, he might as well just, channel his inner Warnock, ask his wife what she dreamt about on Friday night, and bung Muric in the middle of the park. That would benefit us more than what we've been doing dicking about currently. So, I mean, it's one of those, though, isn't it? You can't basically draw that definitive line until we're down to start pissing about. You can't say, well, let's just throw it all out and see what develops and play around. But yeah, I would say if you're gonna start tweaking, start messing about, then yeah, do it and see what comes out of it. But I don't think necessarily we've got any players waiting in the wings really to make that much of a difference.
Mm.
Chris, I mean, I know we've got obviously Josh Brownhill is going to be missing because of his sending off. So there is going to be at least one enforced change. You kind of expect that to be Cullen. I'm going to ask you probably the hardest question. It's one we asked earlier in the season. What will Vinny do? I mean, we're presuming it's going to be Cullen, but given Vinny's track record of giving us a surprise at, an hour before kickoff when the teams come out, there could be a number of options that he looks at, couldn't there?
Yeah, 100%. But I think Cullen's relative impact and the urgency put into his performance at Palace, even in defeat, sort of flags him up as the likely candidate. I'd really like to see us sort of go back to basics a little and throw Corky in there, thicken up the midfield, maybe play Cork and Cullen as sort of a double pivot and play Berger ahead of those, add his sort of attacking instincts to the, just off the front really, and like I say, leave Amdouni. I think Amdouni's a better player than he's getting credit for. He's not shown us a great deal of his ability in recent weeks, but I think we've seen enough over the course of the season to see he's a gifted technical footballer, and he knows where the onion bag is, doesn't he? He's proved that. Say with Ball in the Conference League, and his haul, it's meagre, but it's in a really struggling side. He's done all right over the piece, I think. But Older Bear, there's not what do you play? Brun Larson and Goodmanson, two sort of more workman-like wide players perhaps, and and again it won't happen, but the goalkeeper needs leaving out for his own good, for our sanity. I just he looks up as he plays the pass last week into Brownhill, but not only is it a bad selection, it's the actual pass itself is dreadful, isn't it? It's topped it, and it's time for a rest, I think, and let's see what Muric can offer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I don't know, Andy, you might be able to shed some light on this. I mean, the bits of the press conference we see, I guess, is it's the TV stuff, really. So, it kind of, the broadcast ends before we get to you guys, you and Matt and various other people. But has anybody asked him about kind of Trafford? Does he get asked? I mean, obviously the club never put anything out about him defending Trafford, and the odd kind of after the game stuff he'll talk about, he's young and he's developing. Does anybody ask him about Trafford, or does he give any clues away as to why he's stuck with Trafford for as long as he has done, given certainly some recent performances, I should say?
Yeah, not necessarily, but he doesn't really speak about individuals. He likes to talk about the collective a lot. So, I mean, I remember I asked him after one of Trafford's really good performances, just about, it was after the match, that one, but and again, he sort of said, he did well, but look at all the other ones who were doing well as well. I mean, Dice had a tendency to do that a little bit. Dice would, I always found Dice quite funny because you'd ask him about a certain player and he'd list off all the other players he thought were really good, and then eventually we'd get to the player you'd asked about. But I think it's just been pretty obvious that he seems pretty wedded to Trafford, and I think if there was a chance that he was going to make a change, I feel like it already would have been. When we were chatting before, I think the thing is with Trafford is I think in terms of the goalkeeping stuff, like shot stopping and stuff, I think he's improved, and I think you see the development there. But I think the issue has always been with the ball at his feet. But you can get away with that because he wasn't the guilty party in a massive error. Now he has been, and now so that changes it a little bit because if he was passing it out too slow, or he was inviting pressure by taking too long, but it wasn't necessarily leading to a goal. Now he's been the main culprit for why, it wasn't a goal, but it was a red card. And Kompany was pretty adamant that was the main reason he lost the game. So I think it has just been, I mean, he always goes out of his way to praise Muric and say, what an excellent goalkeeper he is, and which is interesting because he always makes sure whenever he's talking about Trafford to say that we're blessed in the goalkeeping department and we've got both of them there. But then has never. I don't think I've never really got the sense that he's ever been close. I think the only time where I thought he might was the international break when Muric got ill, or he missed it. He had to go away with away early with Kosovo, didn't he? Because they had a qualifier or something, which was really
it was one against Israel, weren't it? Which was kind of on the. I can't remember which away game it was, weren't it? But he basically...
it was Arsenal away, I think it was. There was a game in between that, and I thought that was probably the closest I felt where he had to make a change, because I felt that Trafford, his confidence had gone. But the problem was that because of that Arsenal game, he would have brought Muric in for the game and then had to put Trafford back in away at Arsenal. And I just thought... I don't know how you manage that situation and it not turn out worse than what it could be. And in the end, Trafford has started to pick up. But yeah, it's a difficult one. I think it's still, it still baffles a little bit as to why exactly they thought a goalkeeper was one of the prime upgrades they needed, and a goalkeeper who wasn't a dead cert of, he's going to be a steady Eddie in the Premier League. And I think you can look across the board at Burnley's transfers and say, how many steady Eddies did they buy? And I think that's a large part of it, because I think, if you look at Luton, you sort of know you're going to get 6, 7 out of 10s from most of their team. I don't know with Burnley. That's the thing. You might get a good performance, but you might not. And I think you can look across the board at that. And I think that's similar to Amdouni, really, because I think, as Bodes said, there's a proper player in there, and the problem is that you see it for 10 minutes and then you might not see him for 10 minutes, and then you see him for 10 minutes and then you don't see him for 10 minutes again. And I do think the season's got caught up with him a little bit. I do think there's a lot of tiredness tied to it, and I do wonder why he's not looked at a Cullen, Brownhill-Berg midfield three, because I think if you're looking for steady Eddies, looking for a foundation, I think you can't. That makes sense to me to do it like that. And because I think one of the things at Palace, one of the things I thought they really lacked was someone to come and get the ball deep and move it forward. Yeah. Because Brownhill and Berg were both getting on it, but then moving it sideways, and there was no real progression. So then, as you say, the forward players felt anonymous because there was barely any balls playing up to them. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. I think the money they spent on Trafford, the potentially seeing him, I think remains the reason. And the problem is once you drop him, how do you bring him back in? And I think if you view Trafford as the long-term goalkeeper for Burnley, then it's a difficult one to manage, isn't it? But then equally, you do have to sometimes just put what's good for the team right now ahead of, and he sort of referred to this because he stopped, as he said, it's about the collective now, it's about the team. It's not about individual developments at this point. It's about these last 12 games and getting what we need out of them. And so that makes you think, well, maybe he might be open to it, and he may spring a surprise, because you say you don't know what Kompany's going to do for any team selection, but it does feel like he's wedded to Trafford, and he certainly made sure he wasn't, hanging him out to dry at anything post-match, because I asked him about Trafford, and, he said, I asked him, will you talk to him, how you handle that? And he said, we'll talk to the collective, because it's not an individual, sort of situation. It was for that, but it's a team thing. So it suggests that he's still very much the first choice, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just going to bring one thing in here, and just again, we'll come to you, Andy, to give us your insight. But I noticed something earlier on Samuel Bastian's Instagram, because I'm all over Instagram and following players and things like that, because I'm hip and cool and all that. But Justin, you might not have seen this, because I'm guessing you're going to throw Instagram into that "it's not really meant for me" category.
No, I haven't made that stuff. No.
As you do. But it looks like, I was wondering why he'd not played very much in Turkey, but it looks like he's had a fairly major knee operation.
Wow.
He's got like a big recovery video. I'm just watching it now, where he's got a lot of stitches and what looks like pins in his knee, and he's got like a brace on, but he's back in Burnley by the looks of things. But again, it's another one of these, and like I say, I'm interested to get Andy's thoughts in a minute, but it's another one of those where we're left in the dark over what's happening to our players, aren't we? I mean, we only found out about Foster because he'd had an injury, and then Matt Williams apparently on commentary last week said, it's a a hernia or a groin injury or something like that. But there's that feeling of, we talked about disconnecting in the last question, but if we don't know what's happening with us players and we're just finding out when, they're putting out videos 4 months after they'd kind of, disappeared off the face of the earth, seemingly, it does lead to that kind of, not conspiracy theories, but fans feeling a little bit let down by the club, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. And I don't know why it seems to be a new thing this season to me that we don't find out that a player's injured until after he's had some kind of surgery. And like you say, they post a picture of themselves in a hospital bed, saying, everything went well and I'm on the road to recovery now. Sometimes you don't even know that they're injured. It's happened a few times this season, hasn't it? And yeah, I think it's obviously done on purpose, isn't it? It's obviously a policy they've got. I can't put my finger on why they might be doing it. The only reason I can think of is so they don't give any information away to the opposition about what the team selection might be. But that doesn't seem to be making a great deal of difference either, does it? So and like you say, it kind of enforces this sense that there's a barrier between the club, the players, the staff, and the fans that is only getting thicker and only getting deeper and only getting more impenetrable. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. I can't put my finger on why they're doing it. They certainly seem to be getting a sense that disconnect is happening. As a season ticket holder, obviously, and as you may be, we get a lot of emails from the club asking what we think about various bits and pieces of things that are going on. I don't think that's the way to do it. I don't think reaching out to season ticket holders and asking them what they think the club should be doing is the way forward. I think it should be pretty obvious what they should be doing to rebuild the trust and that sort of sense of the contract between the club and the fans. So yeah, it's another thing to me that they're getting wrong. This sense that it's the club and the fans, and we're not all in it together. That's certainly the impression that they give me, and I've seen lots of other fans saying that over the last sort of 10 months or so, since the end of last season.
Yeah. And Chris, I know, I've been in plenty of press conferences with you where you've asked Sean Dyche about players, and, you knew that when they were back on the grass, they were still about 3.5 months away from a first team appearance. But so all managers to a degree have kind of shielded them, but some do it in different ways, don't they? I mean, it does feel, and I think I asked both Andy and Matt Scrafton and maybe Kelvin earlier in the season, or at least a couple of them, kind of, has anybody asked about, I think it was when Bear was injured the first time, and it was, yeah, we asked, and it just gets battered away. I mean, that's kind of, as a journalist, what, you kind of need that information to kind of fill in the weeks, probably a bit like this week, where, there's no player interviews, you've not been able to catch anyone in the mix zone. You need that information to kind of feed the ecosystem, don't you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's, harking back to the old days. But if you had a long-term injury, it was nice to sort of drop in on them every now and again and do like a progress report, and like someone with an ACL or something like that. You could, I'm halfway through my rehab, things are going well, sort of thing. I'm looking forward to getting back helping the team, sort of thing. For a quiet midweeks. It's a nice little piece. The fans get to find out what's going on, but they've all done it, haven't they? I mean, I can remember Stan being mischievous sometimes when you'd ask him about certain injuries, and you go back, like say Sean, they were, if they weren't Dyche fit, they were on the grass and they were touch and go, weren't they? Something like that. It's I mean, Owen Coyle, when we asked Owen Coyle till we were blue in the face about Remco van der Schaaf, just the general situation. Where is he? Who is he? Why is he? When is he? And just never got anything, And but the less that you're talking to sort of players and forming that bond, and this, we bump into players is that because he's parked in a similar area at Gawthorpe, and you'd have a chat with a few on the way in, or you'd see them after games, and you got to know them quite well, some, and you'd have their phone numbers, and you might get a few snippets of information like that. And it's all sort of it's the modern game. It's not just Burnley. I mean, it's I can imagine you don't get anything like that, at the big hitters, etc. But it was one of those. We went away to pre-season under Steve Cottrell, and he wanted that bond between players and the press for them to trust us. And you had to feel that criticism when criticism was due. I always like to do it in a constructive manner. We're not sensationalists. We're not the news of the world sort of thing. But you had to feel you were able to still, criticise. But those players, the sort of the bonds we formed with them, really, culminating in winning promotion at Wembley in 2009, and a really good bond with that. So Steve Caldwell and Clark Carlisle, Duffo, Wade Elliott, people like that. Great characters, great players, and it just seems that those days are long gone, and it's a shame.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, you're further away than any of us from Turf Moor, and and like I say, we'll come to Andy in a second, but you don't get much from the club, do you? I mean, like if you were to look at the club's website this week, they've announced another exciting new partnership, which we've not touched upon, with a sports leisure company I've never bloody heard of, but seeing as our Fury,
they're all right.
Are they all right? Yeah, all right, that's all right.
I should have worn it. Yeah.
Our Fury's at a golf tournament. I'm sure he's spotting all the Taylor Wimpey or whatever they're called polo shirts out there. But it's
Porco Hobbs.
But it feels like all we get from the club is kind of we've just seen before we came on air, Hannes Delcroix is the guy wheeled out to give us an inspirational quote about how his head never drops and he's ready for the fight and things like that. And I just wish that at some point all 11 at once were ready for the fight, because I reckon we'd be really good if they all had the same week to be ready for the fight. But do you feel kind of more disconnected because there is a lack of external Burnley stuff, notwithstanding kind of Andy's role at the Athletic and Matt at the Burnley Express, but that is about it, isn't it? If you think about back in the day, we probably had a bit more of a vibrant, media coverage, even when we were in the lower divisions. So if you were abroad, you had something to cling to. I know you sit there watching reruns of JJ Watt with Simon discussing Benny and Hearts and things, but the club could do more, couldn't it, to be, to give us content? I mean, content is king, isn't it?
It has to do more, and it isn't just because they can roll out the cute little videos every now and again, and it's pretty much all we've got. But with the very definition of what a community club is, we're nothing else than a community club, Burnley, and they have to make that connection whether they want to or not, because Burnley fans will try and make that connection irrespective. And I think it's more vital for an infinitely smaller club for the players to do what we've been talking about. And I think it's a huge mistake, especially with what we've seen with the turnover and the loss of so-called identity, etc., that we aren't trying to at least make amends for that with either better communication. I mean, whether they got a 2-for-1 deal on knee replacements at Burnley General, I've no idea. No idea. But the fact that we don't find out about this until we see this picture, it seems extremely odd, especially in such a sparse environment for news about Burnley. We aren't getting, stories being told about us left, right and centre. There's literally nothing going on apart from one or two outlets. And so it seems a very odd thing to almost feel like it's a media lockdown in some which way, shape or form. So yeah, we should be doing a lot better.
Definitely. And we passed over to Woody there because listeners might not know, but Woody was a bit of an internet pioneer back in the day, running a very successful blog, heralded by The Guardian on more than one occasion, a sheet metal blog. So, I mean, if Woody can get coverage and plaudits from national newspapers on sheet metal, Andy, the club could probably do quite well to kind of be a bit more... I don't know. Do you feel that they're as open as you want them to be? I mean, the Athletic obviously does does a brilliant job in terms of covering all the clubs they do. And I know you put some, you did a really great piece about kind of, where did it all go wrong? But do you feel that kind of that rapport that Bodes was talking about with players? I know we've both stood in mixed zones and been ignored by Jeff Hendrick on more than one occasion. And I think it used to be Dan Black's mission each week to try and get Jeff to stop and talk.
Jason Shackle was the worst by a million miles. The imaginary phone call had happened. Yeah. Phone would go to the ear. Oh, sorry, I've just got to take this. Sorry.
Different excuse every week, weren't it, when we were stood in the wet? Wow. I should say whilst Chris was in the warm, kind of doing the glamour stuff while we were all stood outside. But how do you see, in terms of your relationship with the club, obviously this week you'd asked the question about Vinny's future, and we're not asking you to kind of break any confidences. So there's clearly a line of communication there with the club. But some of the kind of funner stuff you were perhaps doing last season, you might say to me, well, look, it's because we were winning. It's easy to do. They're happy to put players up. Have you noticed a shift in terms of, maybe because it's the Premier League, how much access you get, or kind of how willing the club are to open up opportunities for you?
I think the main thing for us has been last season, for a lot of the time, a player was put up either before or after the manager, around press conferences, and I think it was, some of it was broadcast, wasn't it? But it helped because, while it didn't need to be every game, and we specifically said, you don't need to put someone up every game, because it got to the point where we'd spoke to, I think it was, I can't remember exactly who it was. It might have been Josh Brownhill. We'd spoken to him like 4 times in not like a short frame of time. So it was like, well, you get to the point where you have asked everything you can ask at that point to one player. But I think that hasn't helped, because that does help, build a bit of a relationship, and they do get to know your face a little bit. And the more they do it, the more, I don't know exactly, but they might feel a little bit more relaxed and, say hello, and you might have a little bit of a chat or whatever, or you can pick up on stuff that you spoke about in the past. Because it was like, I interviewed Josh Cullen recently, which was sort of the first time I'd had much like a proper sit down with a player in this season, and it was great. And I spoke to J-Rod as well at the community event, and it was really good to speak to them, and they were great. And both of them were there last season. Obviously, J-Rod's been a bit longer, so I think you'd recognise my face anyway. So but you can have a little bit of a chat, and there is that sort of little bit of rapport there, but. It's been less so this season. I'm not sure how much language barriers are sort of part of that, because you've gone from Burnley, who had a very English core and a lot of English players, to a club that has brought a lot of young European talent in, and not all of them will know English. And it was the same as last season. Zaroury and Benson, bedded them in a little bit before they still sort of spoke to the press and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been less, I think, because of you not having that sort of the every week, you're going to get the opportunity to speak to a player and just get that little bit of insight, because I think that's the other thing. Vinny can offer a certain insight from his perspective, but it's different being in the dressing room. And when I spoke to Cullen, it was a little bit different in the way he saw it, and the things he was saying. So you do get that little bit of a different side, a little bit of a different insight, and some of it does feel like the insight and the access maybe as even just on socials has sort of reduced a little bit. I mean, there was a lot of sort of filming in, as they were coming out to train and stuff like that, just little bits and pieces. But then, sometimes that can reflect badly on a team that's perceived to be having fun, but isn't winning. And I think that takes a big precedence in it. It is how results are going on and on the pitch mainly, and that can affect the mood. But I think, and I referenced it in the piece that I wrote after Palace, I think there was a lot of cult heroes last year. Some of them, you obviously had Barnsley, you had Nathan Teller, you had Ian Matson, you had Taylor Harwood-Bellis, and then you've even, you had Zaroury and Benson, and there was a lot of players who the fans really related to. A lot to do with what they were doing on the pitch, of course. If a player's scoring goals, the fans are probably going to like them more than if they're not scoring goals. And but you know, there felt like a real connection, and you know, I know obviously you had the sort of the fist bumps and you know, the cricket field and stuff like that, and that's obviously you're not going to do that if you're losing. But if you go through the squad this season, and you know, they haven't. If I don't think supporters have been able to build those connections with many players, if any, really. You know, half the squad had songs last year. You know, how many of them got songs this year? You know, it's even that level of just getting to know them. And one of them we did was Kolyosho, and you know, performance based, I think, was part of that. But you know, you could relate to him, and you could see the energy and the effort and all that type of stuff. And I feel like that connection sort of, well, it isn't the same as it was last year. And I think there's loads of factors to factor into that. From my point of view, I guess not being able to sort of get into, you know, asking them questions on a regular basis and sort of maybe getting a different side of an insight, you know, that has you missed that a little bit when you're trying to paint the full picture. And I imagine it's the same for supporters, because, as I say, there's only so many times you can almost listen to Vinny say, you know, repeat what is a similar message. You want the players who haven't played well on a Saturday, you want to hear what they're, you know, are they, and I know the club can do it and the club have been doing it, but you want to get that different side of it, don't you? And well, what are you doing to change things? You know, what's going on inside the dressing room? What's the mentality? So I think that there's an element to that, but yeah, it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't help. And I think it's the same for every football club. It doesn't help when you're not winning, because how do you put the right content out, and how do you get it the right tone so it doesn't just annoy everyone even more than they already are because of results?
Yeah. We need more content like Turkey with Amazon. That's the content we want, isn't it? That's what we're here for, isn't it? Turkey's missus talking about shagging on. All right, come on. I'm eating my breakfast, man.
it is a bit of a strange one.
Talk curling.
I wonder what Sean said about that. I'd love to know.
What would Sean say? T-shirts still available from the BLM. I mean, Justin, you, I think you were one of the first to utter the kind of, it doesn't feel like Burnley. And what Andy said is right. You know, I didn't really think about that, but if you think about, everyone had a song last year, didn't they? You know, they really kind of, you know. Maybe aside from, you know, Halil Dervisalogu, but everybody else pretty much had a song, didn't they? And this year it's a bit like, I've not heard a Dara O'Shea song. I've not heard a...
I particularly liked Ian. That was my favourite last year.
That's a good one, isn't it? Yeah.
I was good in that.
You know, the Burnley fans are as original as ever, but it did feel like, you know, there were characters in this team, didn't you? I mean, someone like Nathan Teller, I just missed that energy. You don't get that energy, do you? And it's like Andy said, probably a lot of factors, and again, not really considered the language factor, but it is kind of, you know, post match, it tends to be Sander Berger or Josh Brownhill, doesn't it? They tend to be the ones going up.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd feel more of a connection if, you know, I'm trying to pick somebody out who, you know, and Amdouni came out after, you know, particularly good performance that he put in or whatever, and kind of really tried to grab the bull by the horns and say, look, we're in a bit of a bad place, but we're working hard. You know, there's only so many of those kind of slightly patronising, condescending, all eyes on Bournemouth. And I noticed this week we didn't have one of those countdown tweets, and maybe they're saving it for tomorrow. But what do you think would make it feel more Burnley this season? Is it purely results? Is it, you know, the club scaling back on stuff because they don't want to piss people off more? What would make it more Burnley for you?
I don't know. It's a difficult question. I think Andy's absolutely right when he says the big problem is we're losing every game, aren't we? That's the big problem. It's very, very difficult to get a message before the fans that isn't going to annoy people. But I think it's doubly worse than that, because not only are we not performing very well, we're not performing very well in exactly the same ways every week. So it's like, even that period that we talked about, you know, where the form sort of seemed to improve a little bit in the sense that we were putting some performances in. It was always we're not giving ourselves a chance in games because we're always giving away stupid goals and we can't defend set pieces and we're making silly individual mistakes. There's only so many times you can come out and sort of say, yeah, we need to sort that out. We need to stop making these silly mistakes. I mean, he could have said that. He could have given almost the same press conference after almost every game, couldn't he? In that period, yeah, we're performing well. I'm happy with the levels, but we just got to cut out these silly mistakes. We've got to defend set pieces better. We've got to make our set pieces more effective. That's been the real problem, I think. Not only are we losing, but we don't seem to be learning. We don't seem to be putting these problems that are putting every game out of our reach before we even get into the opposition's half. We're not solving those problems. We're not making those. We're continuing to make those mistakes game after game after game. So it's sort of a bit like I said last week. What would they say if they came? What would I mean? I don't know. Yeah, we're working really hard. We're trying to make it so that we're not making these mistakes. But then they go out and do it again, and they go out and do it again. Nobody really wants to hear that, do they? The way to get the connection back with the fans is for us to go to the ground on a Sunday afternoon this week. Go to the ground, watch them play entertaining football, put a shift in, score a couple of goals and don't concede any. We'll be right on side the next time that happens.
Would it? I mean, it's as easy as that, isn't it? I mean, it's as easy as not conceding goals. We all kind of refer back to Vinny. The two statements: the Man City game is the worst we'll play all season.
Yes.
Hold my beer. And the second bit was, knowing how to stop conceding goals is the easiest thing to do. But I mean, Andy and Justin are right, aren't they? In terms of it's difficult to get the message in. But all we want is just a bit of a performance, isn't it? I think we'd all kind of, certainly for our sanity, if we're recording again on Sunday night, where we've not got 24 hours to digest and calm down. If it's a shocker like Palace again and Arsenal, I mean, Christ, we're going to be taking off air, aren't we?
I mean, yeah, you'd like to say it doesn't bear thinking about it, but it does, doesn't it? Because you know exactly that's what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, just we're not asking a lot. Just put an, a modicum of effort in. That's it. Like we said, it all looks disjointed. They don't even look like they even talk to each other, let alone us or you guys or fans, etc. So I don't hold out too much hope for this weekend.
And Chris, just to before we kind of wrap things up, I want you just cast your mind back to all the Burnley managers you've dealt with. Who do you think would have the best chance of getting as a result on Sunday against Bournemouth? Just to kind of give you a bit of a tester before we wrap up. Is it the kind of the solidness of Sean Dyche? Is it the brute force and the fury of Stan Turner? Who would get this group of players firing? Is it Vinny?
It's the sort of someone at work was telling me today that Burnley should have gone for a Warnock type a while ago, and I'm just saying this group is just so unsuited to that. That type. It's like you look at Leeds going from Bielsa to Allardyce. It's just madness. It's madness. In whose right mind can someone concoct that plan? Just 1 minute you go into this, this punishing, brutal training, that Bielsa put them through, and then you go into, can we organise ourselves for a free kick sort of thing? But it's honestly, and this goes against the grain, but someone like an Owen Coyle who would make them feel 10 foot tall, and it's still. I looked at a team from the 09-10 season, and I'm still staggered that group of players, they got 30 points that season, and if they'd have beaten Wigan either at home or away, would have stayed up. And if they'd have won, they had that group of home games against Wolves and Portsmouth and Blackburn, etc., that they all lost. We expected them to pick up a few more points in that. But what he got out of that group for winning the first 4 home games, beating United, beating Everton, the draw against Arsenal, etc., where they were Fabregased to death for half an hour and then come back and do that. But like listening to Duffel the other week, he just the powers of his enthusiasm and that sort of thing. But I think he'd have a job on his hands with this lot, to be honest. But
incredible. I wasn't expecting Owen Coyle on the bingo card to come out. We are still, Owen, we should say, has agreed to come on the podcast at some point. We're just waiting for an opportune moment to bring him in. But it's always interesting to hear former managers. But I agree with you, Chris, that the fact that team got 30 points and this team, which has been assembled at quite great cost and probably will, all individually will go on and do great things. It, might not even muster 2/3 of that is a slight worry. But we'll leave it there. Massive thanks to Andy for joining us and filling in for more than ably for Simon. Don't forget, if you do want your From the Be All End merchandise, then the link will be in the show notes, but it's shop.fromthebeallend.com. They are selling well. They are looking good as well, I have to say. The new claret and blue design that Justin's mustered up due to popular demand has looked good on a couple of fans who have tweeted in their pictures. And don't forget, keep rating, reviewing. I think we're going to have a competition soon for the best review. So get your thinking caps on how you can weave in retro Burnley players into a review. We might give away one of the T-shirts as well. But certainly, from a chart position, we've not been outside the top 100 UK soccer charts since our rant after the Arsenal game. So a couple of weeks inside that top 100. So thank you very much for your support. Enjoy the weekend. I always hate saying that because I know that when we come back round on Monday morning, we're all going to be miffed again. Maybe the tide will turn. Maybe we will see Muric in goal. Maybe we will see a Burnley win. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're watching, enjoy the game and up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Watson. Go.